now have the pleasure to introduce Greg Clark, MP, Minister for Cities, as well as for Higher Education and Science in the United Kingdom, and an alumnus of the London School of Economics, to give the inaugural address. Greg is wonderfully placed to speak today because of his key leadership in urban development and in thinking about cities and the economic contributions they make over several years in the UK government. He's been an MP since 2005 and has been a forceful figure in promoting urban change and indeed giving greater autonomy to cities throughout this time. Please welcome Greg Clark.
Well, Craig, thanks very much indeed for that wonderful introduction, and it's great to see everyone here. It's a particular privilege for me to be on an LSE platform, as well as the Alfred Hairhausen Society's platform, as an alumnus of the school. I distinctly remember my being interviewed for my PhD studentship at LSE. I was at Cambridge at the time doing my undergraduate work. And Cambridge, at the time, feels so less today, felt like a country town in the middle of the fens there. And to come down, to be interviewed at the London School of Economics within the towering canyons of Kingsway and the Aldwych and the Strand, felt like it was at the beating heart of one of the world's greatest cities. There was a thrill and adrenaline from just being there, and to be admitted to postgraduate study at the LSE was a moment that I will always remember, and it stayed with me and has motivated me as I've worked in government to try to make cities even better than they are, and London is a good example of that. Of course, the LSE is not just at the heart of one of our great cities, but its purpose as a school of social sciences is intimately connected with cities. The emblem of LSE, many of you will know, is the beaver. Now, the beaver you might not think is a terribly urban creature, but I think it was when the Webbs chose the beaver as the symbol. They did so because it was an industrious and a social creature. And I thought this rather epitomized the study of the LSE. And so to that extent, industriousness and sociability seem to be two traits of cities that are well represented in the work of the school today. And it is delightful to be here in Delhi, one of the world's great cities. And I think I've been here with some very productive meetings with the Indian government and a big delegation of colleagues from the science sector and from the university and college sector in the UK. And all of us have been struck in the few days that we've been here by the sense of pace, the sense of excitement, the sense of determination to avail ourselves here in India of the accelerating possibilities of collaboration around the world. And that's something that I think characterizes this conference today, and I'm very much looking forward to the later sessions. Anshu, in his opening remarks, pointed out that this really is the age of cities. We are, for the first time, as a human race, a race of people who live in cities. We live mostly in urban places, and this will continue and will accelerate. As Anshu says, over 50% of the population of the world live in cities. But one of the key features of this, and one of the remarkable points to reflect on, is that this comes at a time when it is possible, in a way that it never was before, to live in isolation from each other. There is nothing to compel people to live in cities, and far from it. Everyone in this room, if they chose to do so, could live at the top of a mountain somewhere, communicate virtually through the electronic media that we have today. We have the possibility of isolation available to us, but we're not choosing to take it. just at the point in human history when it is possible to live remotely, actually there is an accelerated tendency for people to choose to come together, to live together, to work together in cities. And there are very good reasons for that, and Anshu alluded to them. The purpose of cities, the raison d'etre of cities, is to bring people together. And to bring people together for a reason, that people can bring together for the purposes of collaboration, their own talents, their own skills, their own abilities, their own specialisms. It allows a degree of complexity and specialization and interaction that we know is profoundly associated with economic growth, wherever that takes place. Broadly speaking, the less economically developed places are places where products are essentially simple things that lots of other people make. But those places that prosper economically, that are more developed economically, tend to be things where complex things are done that not everybody else does. And it is crucial to that that cities should exist, because cities allow that. They're the crucible in which those specializations and those interactions can take place. London has been prospering in recent years because of all of these possibilities. It's an international city. It's gone from strength to strength. But my role in government has been to encourage London to continue its prosperity and its growth, but really to give some encouragement and some practical help to the other UK cities. Over a period of nearly 100 years, during most of the LSE's existence, there has been a centralization of the state in the UK, so that the powers of our great cities outside London have tended to gradually be eroded and vested in policymakers in Westminster and Whitehall in the centre of London, despite the fact that the heritage and the foundation of some of our great cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, Sheffield, Leeds, Bristol, Nottingham, all of these cities were driven forward by the local strength and the local leadership that they had. Joseph Chamberlain in Birmingham set the tone for the independent vision of a city leader when he had to think twice and agonize long and hard about whether he should accept an invitation to join the cabinet, the national government, and leave behind what he thought were the greater practical possibilities for improvement of continuing to run his great city of Birmingham. But since that high watermark, power has flowed away from our cities and to London. So my role in government has been to reverse that. And we've done it through conducting a series of what we've called city deals, in which I have gone to the leaders, business and civic, of each of our great cities and said to them, if you had the chance to take powers back from the centre, to take budgets currently held at the national level and to take them back locally, what would you do? Make us an offer. And it was instructive at first, because the first reaction to that invitation was, I'll confess to you, rather dispiriting. People would come to me in meetings. They'd be grateful for the invitation. But in the margins of the meetings, they'd sidle up to me and say, you tell us what you want us to say, and then we'll say it, and then we know that you'll agree with it. And you can sort of see the logic of that if you've been used to power residing at the centre. But I said to them, I'm not going to tell you what to say, because the point of my doing this job and issuing this invitation is that I think you know more about your cities and its needs than I do sitting in London. So please go back and talk to your colleagues and tell us what you really want. But we had a few rounds of this, and I had to do a bit of coaching and saying, come back and make it a bit more ambitious. But finally, the penny dropped, and the propositions that came forward are truly revolutionary. we have conducted a series of deals that, for example, have established in that great city of Liverpool a mayor of Liverpool who now is becoming an increasingly prominent national figure and indeed international figure. I had the privilege of speaking on a platform in a conference of mayors with the mayor of Liverpool, an international conference, and you can be sure that the interest of his fellow mayors was very much in the mayor of Liverpool rather than the Minister for Cities in the UK. And that's exactly as it should be, because our great cities have a connection with each other around the world, which should be encouraged. We have just 2 weeks ago concluded a new deal with the city of Manchester, Greater Manchester, which will establish a directly elected mayor of Greater Manchester and devolve powers over transport, over economic development, over planning, over the reform of the public services to make sure that the citizens of that great city can be best equipped to prosper economically in the future. And that is a process that now has a real momentum behind it, and we're in negotiation with all of the big cities for the further devolution of powers. And always and everywhere, it is the same proposition, that the cities are invited to put forward to government how they think things should be done differently, and my injunction to them is to make the government an offer it can't refuse. Because my belief is that what is good for a city is good for the nation. A nation cannot prosper at its optimal extent unless every part of the economy is firing on all cylinders. And so a prosperous network of cities around the country means for a prosperous nation. I just wanted to reflect on some of the lessons that I've drawn from the involvement that I've had in working with UK cities. And I know from talking to colleagues, and I hope in our discussions today, we will see whether some of these perhaps resonate with the experience of colleagues around the world. So 8 lessons that I've learned from my work with cities that make for a prosperous future for cities in the UK. The first, I think, is to recognize the difference between cities. Cities have a character, they have a personality, they have a history, they have a feel to them. And too often, it seems to me, national government, in its desire always to be tidy and to be administratively neat, can trample over those differences and try to regard cities as being the same or similar in their arrangements. But no two cities are alike, and that is to suppress the vitality and the difference and the character of each of those cities. If I take 2 cities in the United Kingdom, I've mentioned them already, Liverpool and Manchester, about 35 miles apart. Any colleagues in the room that have stood in the centre of Liverpool, perhaps at the pier head, could not possibly confuse it with Manchester, close as it is. They have different traditions, different industries, different politics, different types of workforces, different skills there, to say nothing of the sporting and cultural rivalries between those great cities. And it seems to me that each city will prosper when the character can emerge, when the differences can emerge, and the policies can be adjusted to the particular needs of each city. So one city, for example, may find that improved transport connections are the overriding barrier that separates it from prospering to its maximum extent. In another city, they may have perfectly good transport connections, and it could be that the industry in that city may be booming, and the challenge is to get skilled people with the right level of skills to equip that city with the labor that it needs. Different challenges in different places, and it's important always to respect that difference. And one of the principles of our program of city deals in the United Kingdom is that each one is bespoke, There is no standard element to it. Each is individually negotiated, reflecting and respecting the differences between cities. The second imperative that I would say the best cities are alive to is the challenge to respect the past and the history, but not to be imprisoned by it. We have new cities, but a lot of our cities, including the city, a great city in which we stand today, have a distinguished history. Now, we all know that that having a heritage and a history can be a source of constraint, whether architecturally or whether in the way that things are done. But the one thing that we know about cities is that the pace has to be quick. There's no point in people coming together if they can't do things quickly and spontaneously. Sometimes cities are compared to living organisms, and one can see the metaphor there working in various respects. But one respect in which the organic metaphor, I think, doesn't work is in the sense that the metabolism of living creatures tends to be slower the larger the creature is. An elephant has a slower heartbeat than a mouse. In cities, the reverse is true. A good city, a prosperous city, makes the heartbeat faster. You want to feel the adrenaline that I felt when I first came to London to begin my studies at LSE. A city should be in constant flux. If you take an example of the skyline of London, familiar to everyone in this room in their mind's eye, if you think about it, what do you think of? You think of perhaps the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, Big Ben, perhaps, Tower Bridge. But now if you think of your most recent visit to London, if you've been there, you can probably add to that the Shard, the tallest building in London. You might add the London Eye on the South Bank, or one of the new buildings in the city, such as the Gherkin. They've become, in the last 10 or 15 years, part of our image of London, that great city that goes back to Roman times and beyond. So it seems to me that the governance of cities must ensure that it preserves the best of the past and draws on that, but it is always open to change and to pace, that it should be experimental, provisional in many respects, but always beating with a rapid pulse. The third observation I would make is that the boundaries that define our cities should be thought about carefully, and that we should not be too respectful of what may be inherited administrative boundaries. Cities grow, they develop in a way that, if they are developing apace, can outstrip the administrative boundaries that previously defined them. In the UK, we find that many of our cities are divided up into a series of boroughs, which actually don't truly reflect the real economic geography of the city, the people that come to work there, the people that come to take their leisure there. So to find arrangements in governments that you can reflect the real economic geography of cities, and where necessary to bring together some of the administrative parts is a challenge that we've certainly found important in the UK. Part of our city deals have been to create, where there have been fragmented structures of local government, by voluntary cooperation, new combinations. So in Manchester, the Greater Manchester boroughs have formed a single combined authority where they've pooled their sovereignty. They're going on to create a mayor of Greater Manchester who will take powers from central government but exercise them with a direct mandate from the people of Greater Manchester as a whole. And that has happened across the other cities as well. Leeds, in the northeast, Newcastle and Gateshead, across Yorkshire, in Sheffield, other places in the country are contemplating the same. The fourth observation I would make, again, reflects a point that Anshu alluded to. The very old model of a city as a fortified state, erecting literally city walls to keep out intruders, to repel borders, as it were. That may have been the right model for medieval times, but it is the opposite of the right model now. If you look at the history of the City of London, London started to prosper when holes literally started to be punched in the city walls of London, when Moorgate was created in the northern wall of the City of London to provide a gate to allow traders from outside to come in and bring their produce. Very quickly, a connection with Cambridge was established. The gate had to be widened. It wasn't big enough for the traffic that was coming in and out. And very shortly after that, the whole of the city walls of the City of London were demolished to reflect the fact that the City of London was becoming a great trading port, and people were to be welcomed rather than repelled. We know that today. The great cities, successful cities, have good connections with each other. Whether they are other cities within their country, and Germany is a very good example of a network of cities that have established very good transport connections with each other, or whether it's global cities like Delhi, which in its links to the great cities of the rest of the world, prosper and draw strength from those connections. Here again in the UK, we are making progress in catching up with, I think, a series of improvements that we should have made some time ago. We're not a big country. The distance between our cities geographically is not so great. But sometimes the transport connections between our cities have not improved very considerably since the Victorian times. It takes to travel by train at the moment about 2 hours to travel from Birmingham to Leeds in the UK. And it takes about an hour and a half to travel from Birmingham to Manchester. Under the new high-speed rail line that we are proposing to link our great cities, it will take, to go from Birmingham to Leeds, under an hour, and it will take 40 minutes to travel to Manchester. These are the types of distances that it is common to travel within a city. And so it gives the possibility of a much greater connection between cities than has been the past. The fifth point that I would make that we've drawn from our UK experiences is that cities must be livable and attractive places. No one wants to choose to come to be based in a city. And as I say, we do have that choice now. No one wants to come to a city in a penitential way, that we have to be there to work, but we'd really rather be somewhere else. If people want to come and live their lives in a city, they want to do so with enthusiasm and with joy. They want to be able to enjoy themselves in cities. They want to be able to take leisure time there. They want them to be pleasant and attractive places. No city can prosper if it is a hellhole. A city to prosper needs to be an exciting, attractive, wonderful place that we choose to live in, that has big consequences for the environment in cities. It is a route to disaster to ignore the need to make sure that the environmental attractiveness and sustainability of cities is absolutely at the heart of policy making. And it seems to me that the economic success of a city must go in hand with the cultural success of a city. People don't just work. People want to be stimulated and want to enjoy themselves in other ways. And a city that develops on one axis without developing on the cultural axis is unlikely to prosper in the way that others do. And again, in this great city of Delhi and in London, I would say that the economic success of both cities is indivisible from the cultural success of both cities. The sixth point I would make is on education. I've mentioned that cities are places that are attracting people to live in them. People are coming to cities from the countryside and from other nations to live in cities around the world. But it's not enough just to attract talent, important though that is. Cities need to propagate their own talent. And of course, to do that, the educational system is of huge importance. One of the big achievements that we've made in London in recent years is a transformation in the performance of the school system in London. Until not long ago, there was a certain fatalism that thought that education in an inner urban environment was difficult and perhaps next to impossible to achieve sustained, comprehensive excellence from. We've shown that not to be the case. The transformation in the performance of London schools means that the standard of education in our most urban areas, in many cases, outstrips that of the suburbs and areas in the countryside. And it has shown to every city in our country that where there is a record of educational underachievement, that can be transformed. And that goes also in admissions to universities, where there has been a huge increase from London. And institutions like LSE, rooted in cities, have a very important place part to play in driving forward the ability of local people to access the system of higher education generally. The seventh observation I would make about cities from my work with UK cities is, and this conference is abundant testimony to that, the increasing internationalism of our best cities, both in terms of the people who live and work there and in the connections between cities. I find increasingly that when it comes to global investments, it is not just countries that compete with each other, but increasingly cities compete with other cities to attract the best, whether that is corporate investment or talent. And relating back to all of the points that I've made, if you're going to attract global investors to come and locate in a city against another rival city around the world, then it is likely to be as much on the basis of the attractiveness and the livability of that city as it is in its narrowly defined economic opportunities. And so the global network of cities, knowing each other, complementing each other, but also competing with each other, I think is a phenomenon we increasingly see. And finally, leadership. It is last on my list, but perhaps the one factor that I think is essential to bring together all of the observations that I've made above. It seems to me that we accept that nations can be well-led or badly led. We have great political contests and elections every few years to decide who should lead our nations. And it does make a difference. The leadership of a country can make a difference between greater success or the lack of that success. So it is of countries, so it is increasingly of cities. And cities need leadership. The more complex they are, the more important it seems to me to have a person there with a mandate who can put forward a vision and have competing visions from democratic rivals as to what the future of that city is, can conclude their debate and have the endorsement and the mandate to take action to drive that city forward. We have been creating mayors across UK cities. In London, Boris Johnson was mentioned as a name that is known not just across London, but across the UK and increasingly across the world. I fully expect that the Mayor of Manchester, when elected, will be a similarly national and global figure. That mandate, it seems to me, is important. So these are some of the observations that I have found in working with cities in the UK. I look forward to the discussion that we're going to be having during the course of the day. But it comes down to, I think, this, that whether whether it's in the study of cities and the practice of urbanization in which we're taking place, or whether through the work that is done in institutions like LSE and its counterparts here in India. One of the features of progress in our world is that the depth of collaboration is a good indicator of the rate of progress that we make. Science knows no boundaries. Industry increasingly knows no boundaries. And I think the way that we think of our cities benefits from sharing our experiences and our successes, as well as some of our failures. This forum is a fantastic opportunity to do this today. It has, over years, become an institution in itself.